Hey, hi everyone.
So we'll wait for 2-3 minutes and we will start. Let's see if some more people are joining. Okay, so let's begin. So I hope my audio is clear and my screen is visible. So before starting, right, let me give a quick intro about myself. My name is Karthik. Um, I have a total of around 8+ years in the industry. I began my career as a manual test engineer with IBM, and later I moved into automation testing and learned all the tools and the basics with respect to automation, both Selenium and API. And then I joined a startup product-based company called Freshworks, where I got transition from a tester into a development role. Uh, Primarily, I learned the backend development there and APIs and everything, how the API works, and I got to know the backend architecture, how distributed database and database and everything there. And currently, I'm working in Amazon as SDE2 with Alexa. So I'm doing this part-time training with the weight automation. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, I would like a little over 8 years of experience and in this field. So I would also like to know my audience as well, right? I mean, you don't have to unmute yourself and reply every time. You can use the chat window to maybe reply to my questions there. So how many of you have a first-hand experience in testing or API, or anyone is totally new here? Maybe you can reply in the chat window. Okay, so I'm getting very few responses. Maybe others also, if you can actively participate, at least we can make the session a little more interactive. So new to API, new to IT field, new to API testing. And also, if you can let me know, like how many years of experience you have in the IT field, or if you are also a fresher or even a college grad, it is totally fine. Maybe so that I can just start with basics or how we can approach about this. We can see. Right. The first two sessions are going to be about the demo sessions, and maybe from the second week, it is going to be the continuation from where we left from the demo sessions itself. It's going to be in that way. Right. Okay, I have experience with API, but not with automation. Okay. Okay. Okay, since we have a mixture of people here, right, who are totally newbies and who have little experience in manual API, but not with automation API. Let's start with the basic itself, right? Maybe I will ask few questions in between then and there, and if you could answer in the chat window, I'll get to know, like, we are interactively participating here, and also I'll get to know the pulse of my audience. Thank you. So I just wanted to understand from you people. So before jumping into the other usual stuffs, right? Postman and how it works and the features and all, and even rest assured the automation frameworks and everything. What I feel is like understanding how an API works from end to end is very crucial, right? And if that we are clear, the other tools are just to manage these APIs, correct? They are just a way of doing certain things over API, but the core concept remains same irrespective of whatever tools that we use, correct? So first question, right? I just wanted to understand from you people, what is an API and why it is significant? Any answers you can actually reply in the chat window. I mean, we all know API is application program interface. I don't want just an like full form. I just wanted to very basic, very minimal answers of this. What is an API? Why we are using an API even in the first place? Any answers? Yes, as simple as this, right? Thank you. So it is just a communication tool between two systems over the internet, right? One of the simplest answer, and yes, end to end is what this API is overall about, right? One system has to communicate with another system over the internet, right? But how it has to be under some protocol, correct? Everyone cannot communicate openly everything over the internet, and which is a very basic of how we can handle the system securely, right? For example, let's say I have a computer one in a network, and let's say computer two. So I just wanted to send some information from computer one to computer two, or receive an information from computer two from computer one, right? So I should be able to send some data to the computer two via certain protocols. Protocols are nothing but a standard set of model how we can actually carry out this communication, right? So what are the possibilities? We can directly, anyway, this transaction is going to take place over the internet through fiber optic cables nowadays, right? And there are layers in which it can take place. I think you would have studied about this ISO OSI model, right? The 7-layer of the transaction that takes place between any two systems in the internet, right? Application layer, presentation session, transport, and you don't have to worry about those layers and all. The simplest answer is like you are sending something and it is converted into bytes, right? And bits and bytes, and it is transferred as the ones and zeros over the fiber optic cable in the form of light, and it is interpreted by this computer and another computer, right? And it is actually processing that information, returning that information back to the computer one, correct? So the computer which generally the computer in the network which requires information or which sends this request is called a client, right? And the computer which can process this information is called a server, right? So clients and servers are nothing but two computers that are in the system connected through some network, right? You don't have to think like client is a totally different thing and the server is totally different thing. At the end of the day, both are you can think as a computers, right? With some CPU, RAM, and memory, and it is requesting some information here, and this server is another computer too, which understands this information to be able to return back to the computer one, right? Just so why another next question, right? Why a two system has to communicate over the internet? That is another question that arises now. We say two systems are communicating. Why it has to communicate even in the first place? Any answers? For processing request, yes. But what requests are processing and why event we are processing, right? To use certain things, right? For example, share information, yes, or to securely access our even our own personal information, correct? Let's say you are using your Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram, whatever it is. The data is served to you, right? You cannot, for example, someone in your friend list uploads some data over his Facebook profile, and that is going to be listed in your feed, correct? How these things are possible? Because you are requesting the data to the server. Let's say this, you are the client right now, which is who is using a Facebook, and you are requesting what data to the server, to the Facebook server. Hey, load the latest news feed for me. Now the server understands this request, and it is used to okay, hey, these are the recent updates from your friends circle, and it is returning this response back to the client, right? So for very basic purpose, how a transaction is even processed in the network, no, we need a client server architecture, correct? Facebook is a very common example that I have given, but for any types of transaction, be it, let's say you are using your net banking and to, let's say, spend some money, or let's say you are using your simple search in Google to find something. Nowadays, Chat GPT is a very big thing, right? So whatever it is, everything takes place via this internet, right? And some information is processed or in the server end, and based on the information that you are requesting to the server, and based on that, the server processes the information, gives back to the client. So modern technology, which are driven by these apps, or even simple thing that you do over the internet, is powered by this client server architecture, correct? So without that, we cannot, nothing happens. We cannot establish anything between your server and the client, or even you will not get any information to be loaded in your browser. Correct? So that's a very essential of why these APIs are even existing in the first place, correct? So we understood that we need some sort of communication between client and server, and for that we have certain protocol also we understood, right? But the question comes, right? So who are these clients is the next question, no? Let's talk about the clients for a little bit here. So who are these clients? I said client is essentially any computer that a user or any person can access to request certain information, no? So what can be a client? Let's say, let's put the first example, our laptop, right? Laptops which requires certain information, even we are connected via Zoom call, I am able to receive your feeds because of some client server architecture, correct? And you are able to see my screen because of some data transfer that is happening from my end to your end, right? Even here APIs are involved. Let's say, let's put it this way, laptop is a client. Here, what is an application that access the server's information that we are able to connect to? Here, Zoom is the app, right? So can I call this Zoom as a client? Correct, right? We can call Zoom as a client, right? So Zoom is also a tool which enables us to actually connect two systems over the internet, two parties over the internet, right? Here the parties are me, who is presenting, and the audience who is listening, right? So yes, Zoom is also a client. And let's see another example. Let's say we use browsers and all, right? Have a Chrome installed, Edge installed. Actually, please try out Edge. Recent ChatGPT interactions are very phenomenal, actually. Recently, we trying it out for my own use cases. It's been very helpful. Anyway, so let's call this, let's say Chrome, Edge, everything, right? Can we call this as a client? Yes, right. Because these are the tools which helps us to request certain information from the internet and gathers the response back. Correct. So let's put another example. You have your Instagram installed in your mobile. I think someone's video is turned on. Please switch it off. Maybe by accident, I guess. I think Sheetal Mishra, if you can hear me, I think your video is turned on. Please turn off. Okay, so let's continue. So the Instagram, yes, right? Can we call this Instagram as a client? Let's say Instagram is an application that you have installed in your mobile devices, correct? Can we call this as a client? Yes. Why? Why we can call this as a client? I want to know the reason why. It's just application, no? Why it is a client? Any answers? Yes. So it can process the information that is available in the server, right? By placing some request, correct? So Instagram can be considered as a client, right? So now you understand the basic, no? Okay, let's see a few more examples. We have a Postman, no? Postman, I think people are new to API don't mind it, but at least people who are like little having an idea about what is an API or Postman tool, right? Postman tool is a tool that is able to, we are able to manage or organize our APIs and even test our APIs, or maybe do some little automation with it. That's the purpose of Postman, but can we call the Postman as a client? Yes, because it is able to process, send or receive the request, correct? And one more example, can we call this rest assured is the Java library? Through code, we can do something over internet, right? Can we call this rest assured as a client? Rest assured is just a Java code, correct? So yes, so it's not only about an application, any piece of Java code also you can deem it as a client because it is able to send and receive the request, correct? So you just have to understand the client in a very broad terms, right? Client is not any single entity as such. It can be anything. It can be a simple piece of code, or it can be an application that is written. It can be tools like Chrome or Edge. It can be your laptop that sends or receives information, or an application like Zoom installed in your laptop. Correct? Anything can be deemed as a client as long as that tool has a capability to connect over the internet and place the request to the server or connect to the server to process some request. Correct? So all these things can be deemed as a client, right? Now, so we have understood little about the client. Now let's understand what is a server in this context itself. So let's say Zoom is a client, right? So what is a server in this context of Zoom? Any answers? Which can be deemed as a server here? So I'm sharing the screen, right? And the screen is visible to my audience because why? Why it is visible? How it is visible actually? So someone is in the middle, right? Which is actually getting my data packets and is able to transfer these data packets as securely to the audience who are connected through to this channel. Correct? That middleman can I call that as a server? So essentially, I am also connected to one server and audience as you also connected to one server. Correct? And those servers are called Zoom servers, right? So Zoom is a client, then who is a server? Then any answers here? So we have to have a small differentiation. Zoom app is the client, and Zoom as a company who manages this data, right? They can we call that them as a server? Server? Yes or no? Who is a server in this context? Can we call Zoom company as servers, or at least the person who are responsible of maintaining these servers? Yes, right? No. Okay, interesting answer. Why no? Are people who says no? I just wanted to hear from you, like why not? I just wanted to clear any things then and there. So servers are nothing but another computer sitting in another end of the world, correct? Nothing complex there. Just that I'm connected to the Zoom server and the data is transferred from my end to the Zoom servers, right? And it streams, there are many backend technologies to stream this incoming data, especially this video and audio data and all that. There are many libraries, standards, and protocols or tools to enable this streaming of these data packets. And that streaming is actually taken care by the servers, correct? A computer that is understanding the request and processing request, right? So yes, it can be deemed as a server, correct? So let's say another example, Chrome or Edge, right? Let's go to the Chrome. Or let's go to, for fun, let's go to even Microsoft Edge and ask ChatGPT, hi, right? So it's gives some reply, right? I got some reply, correct? So now I am this browser, Edge browser is a client, right? Now who is the server here? Any answers? Any answers? Who is the server here? I got some response here, if you can see. This OpenAI, right? This is going to the Microsoft's Bing servers. In turn, this is powered by OpenAI only. So yes, OpenAI can be a server, correct? You don't understood the concept, right? The person who is responsible for processing this information is termed as a server. How the OpenAI is again like let's say a large language model that should be run on some computer, right? It cannot run on thin air, correct? There are some logics, some AI tools or models or libraries or whatever it is that should run on some computer, correct? Which has a CPU or memory or whatever, right? So in turn, that application or OpenAI which process this information in a certain computer is called as a server, correct? And let's give you another simple example. Here I'm going to Google and I'm just typing something. Okay, weather today, right? Something like that. Now I'm just requesting the information from where? Who is the server here? Here the client is the Chrome browser. Now who is the server here? Server is Google here, right? Because I'm getting the response directly from Google, correct? And one interesting information also we will see. Now this weather information, I'm currently in Coimbatore. Okay. I'm getting the weather information from Coimbatore, but it is not directly powered by Google. If you see here, I'm getting the weather information from weather.com, right? Now, who is the server for Google then? I'm requesting information to Google, but in turn, Google is requesting weather information to weather.com, right? So it's like a cascade of the request that is happening in the background, right? And finally, I don't have to worry about who is Google communicating to, right? As long as I get the answers from the Google, it's well and good, right? Google may communicate with other servers to get this information because it's not a responsibility of Google to store all the weather information, right? So what it can do is it can get the information from weather.com and maybe store it temporarily or serve to the client as and when needed, right? On the need basis, correct? So essentially, this information is returned from weather.com, but who is the server who is giving this information to me? That is Google. So I'm directly talking with Google, right? So that's other thing we need to understand. So in this context, even the browsers, which is enabling us to communicate to the other websites through certain APIs, right? Those can be, what is the server in those contexts? Whatever thing that is processing our request is server. In the ChatGPT example or Edge example, ChatGPT is our server. In this Google example, Google is our server. So servers will differ, right? One client can connect to multiple servers, right? It is not like one client has to connect with one server like that, correct? Right? Or As long as the client is capable of connecting to internet, or in some cases where you need some secure way of connecting, as long as security is enabled or some authentication is enabled, in any client can connect to any server. Especially I mean, apart from few scenarios where you are connected in a VPN and your domain is not exposed publicly, and those are very special scenarios. Maybe we'll see in the later point of this course. But generally, in an internet, any website can be accessed by any person, or any information can be accessed by any person, as long as you have a right to access to it, right? Right to access to it in the sense like I cannot get some data which is meant for your Instagram feed, right? So these kind of security things will be automatically taken care based upon who your identity is. And those things we will see later in the authentication authorization sections. So this part is clear, right? The client, there are certain clients like our Zoom app or Instagram or Chrome or Edge or even Restashio, which request information to certain servers, right? Servers like Google or ChatGPT or Instagram servers to get the information that is required for us, correct? Let's again, how this information is processed, we will just see a small example. Let's say this is a Chrome developer tool, correct? How many of you have used this? So this is where you can see what is happening in the background now. Any operation that are happening in your browser can be monitored through this. And I hope everyone is using this ad block. I hope everyone is aware of this. It can stop ads. Even YouTube ads, pretty much free of YouTube ads without any YouTube premium because of this ad block. Anyway, if you see, this ad block is also one of the part of this developer window. So it's totally up to the developer to actually give us the permission to see what is happening here and all. So let's come back to this Chrome developer tools, right? So what's the purpose of a Chrome developer tool? Correct. Any answers? If you go to the Edge browser, no, let's say if you go to inspect, you can see certain things here, right? Up to the bottom. Almost similar to what we see here in the Google Chrome, right? Chrome and even the Edge browsers are developed from a same base library called Chromium. Okay, anyway, let's concentrate on Chrome here. Even in any browsers, you can see this developer window actually. Right. So if you see here, there are certain tabs where you can see certain informations. As someone has answered, you can see HTML code of a certain web page, correct? So if you go to this elements tab, right, whatever data that you're looking in the browser, right, so ultimately it is an HTML code, correct? The HTML code is rendered as a web page by the Chrome browser for us in a orderly manner. A person who just can see this HTML code cannot understand anything, no? So Chrome does the job of rendering this HTML code properly in a certain template. In this example, it's a list of certain websites, right? So that the user can understand this data in a better format, correct? So elements is the tab where you can see this HTML code and which part of the code is responsible for what and how this HTML is structured, right? Okay, before that, any web page constitute of three major elements. What are those? HTML is first, and what are the other two elements? What are the other two elements? Let's take an example of any web page. HTML is, I think someone has answered, correct? Kumar and Tripti, correct? HTML and CSS and JavaScript, correct? So HTML is responsible for structure of the web page. Here in the Google example, the structure is like a list of links and the additional this widget that you see here, right? That is the structure that is rendered by this web page, you know. That is actually given by the HTML. Then what is the CSS responsible for? CSS is responsible for the style, right? So CSS is responsible for the style, the colors, and even certain extent the where to put which element in what orientation, in what pixel size, right? Look and feel, yes, beautification, yes. So without the CSS, this page will look very basic and simple, like how you see this Google page before 15-20 years, correct? So CSS adds a touch of beauty and element to it. Even you see this rounded edges on this element, right? Even if this is powered by CSS. This edge can be rounded or squared. Everything can be managed by CSS, correct? So that you have a better feel about the website that you're looking into, correct? Now, what's a JavaScript then? What's the purpose of JavaScript in any web page? Logics, yes. JavaScript is where the functionality is, correct, Abhinav and Kumar. Thank you. JavaScript is where core functionality of any web pages happen, correct? Let's say you're doing some operation over the web page. HTML cannot do that logic for you, right? Let's say if you have a simple if condition, hey, if something is typed like this, do some thing here like this, right? That kind of simple logics you can actually handle. You can use a if condition for loop, or have some conditional thing to get some APIs and format those APIs, right? Whatever the functionality that you see in this website, no, it is actually given by your JavaScript, correct? So let's say I'm clicking on this link and it's actually redirecting me. Even that can be handled in multiple ways, and primarily through JavaScript also, correct? So there are, let's say I'm clicking on this precipitation, and if you see here, the data is moving here and there, right? The weather information. All this can be powered by JavaScript, right? So it is responsible for logic. For example, if I'm clicking Saturdays, it is displaying Saturday here, right? Even this simple logic is actually powered by JavaScript here, correct? So JavaScript is, someone has answered, is the heart of any website, where you actual functionality or how the website function is actually driven by the JavaScript. And HTML just gives the structure, CSS just gives the style. JavaScript is where the heart of the matter lies, right? So if you see here, but this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, everything can be considered as a static file, correct? Static file in the sense like HTML is modifiable, yes. There can be, and once a web developer actually develops a website with certain functionality and certain look, and maybe with a certain structure, right? If you consider in that perspective, all these things are kind of a static file in the sense like doesn't change over time, unless a developer in the Google choose to change its behavior or look, correct? Agree with me or not? So essentially, these are some static files, correct? So static files are the files which doesn't change its content over the period of time, unless a developer chooses to change its content. Let's say I was talking about this small image with a rounded edges here, right? Unless I choose to, if I'm in Google, and unless I choose to change to a square edge, will it change? Everything will be rounded edge only, right? If you see here, will this structure change? Unless I choose to, as a developer, I choose to change. No, correct? So these are some static elements which are powered by CSS, correct? So where you can see the static elements is like, you can go to sources and you can see some static contents here, correct? If you click on these images, correct? This even the simple Google is actually got by some API, but it's a static image, correct? So it can be loaded not dynamically by through static methods. I'll talk about what are those static methods in a short while. But these are just static files that are coming from the server to our client. And even if you see here, to some extent, even this search icon and this trend icon, whatever you see here, right? The search icon, everything is coming from a static image only. And If you see that even the folder name is named as static. And this is a JavaScript, correct? This is where logic lies. Some JavaScript they would have written, but this logic is not going to change, correct? So this file also can be loaded as a static file, correct? To render some functionality over this Google web page, right? I think some CSS files might be also there. If you go to network and once I refresh the same page, if you can see here, if you go to this all, it will actually fetch all the requests that is actually triggered for this particular Google web page. If you go to JS stands for JavaScript, right? So what are the JavaScript files that are loaded for this particular web page? See this much, even if you see this Google web page is very simple web page, right? But there are so many JavaScript that are associated with this web page, at least 10, 15 file is there, right? You see, these are each one is a separate JavaScript which is handling separate functionality. For example, this Google is connected with my account, right? Karthik's account, correct? Even that is handled by its own JavaScript, correct? Because if you load Google, your email ID will look different, your image will look different, correct? So all these things are handled by this JavaScript, what image to load based upon my identity, right? Everything is taken care by this JavaScript logic. Page may appear simple, and even I can go to this different apps that are connected to my account, correct? Page may appear simple, but everything is powered by different JavaScript that is coming from Google servers, correct? If you so go to CSS, you can see the CSS file that is powering this style of this web page. Don't worry about how the CSS works and all. That is not the scope of what we are seeing here. But just understand the CSS file is actually doing some styling over here, and that file we got it here. And if you go to images, you can see what are the images that are loaded as a part of this web page through Google APIs that are hit. Right? If you see this Google image is also this image that you're seeing here, right? It is also loaded as an image through an API request. If you go to this URL, no, this is the URL responsible for getting this image. Even I can copy this URL and hit it in the separate window. Right? You can get this image separately as well. Right? Okay, one question before we proceed. See, this URL is hit by someone. So that only we got this Google image, and that image is rendered in this top left corner. Correct. Now, who is responsible for hitting this URL? Somehow this URL is hit here, and then only we got this response as an image. No, who is hitting this URL? Actually. Any answers? Browser, yes, but what is triggering that URL is okay. Maybe the specific question is what triggers this URL, or in which place this URL gets triggered. Yes, image SRC attribute, maybe one answer, correct, Raghav, thank you. And what may be the other methods where this URL might be getting triggered? Can this URL be triggered through JavaScript? That is got as one of the we got this JavaScript right here with the different script that is loaded. JavaScript, yes, JavaScript also we can do this, right? It's not only about source attribute. JavaScript also can trigger this API request and get the response and render it in the right HTML placeholder here, correct? So yes, so if you see here, there are small things, right? I think it's a Wikipedia link article and search icon, right? Small things. Everything is loaded as a separate API request, correct? Even if you see here, this icon pack, correct? That you see here, right? For YouTube, play button, Meet, Gmail, news, everything. Whatever you see here is loaded as a image only. That is actually given by some URL, right? That is this URL. If you see here, the URL itself says it's a static, correct? And again, why this is a static content? Does this icon changes daily? Today, if I'm clicking, tomorrow, if I'm clicking on new icon is going to come, or some new Google logo is going to come. No, right? So these are the things which doesn't change frequently over the time. It is changeable, yes, but doesn't change frequently over the time, correct? So can this content can be the static content? These are not dynamic content, right? This can be deemed as static contents, no? So then the question comes, right? In this website, in this Google website, right? What is a dynamic content then? Any answers? This image is static content, JavaScript is static, HTML is static, everything is static. Means what is the dynamic then? Yes, data that is coming from the Google server, right? Correct. I think this batch of people are pretty sharp, I guess. I don't think I have much effort in the coming sessions. Okay. The data which is actually coming from the search, even in the links that are getting updated, and the data that you see here, right? These are data that are changed very frequently, right? Today, if I'm seeing on 33 degrees Celsius, tomorrow it may be different, or in next minute it may be different, changes over the period of time. No? So these are dynamic contents that gets loaded through the API requests again, right? But one thing, right? The static content is also loaded from API request, and dynamic content is also loaded from API request. Means then why we need even the separation of static and dynamic? What's the advantage? Everything's loaded via some API request. Even if you see here, right, in the network tab, if you go to this XHR, this is the place where this Ajax request gets triggered. We'll come to what is Ajax and later. But this is the request where maybe you can say some dynamic contents that are get triggered. You can see the responses here. Right. At the end of the day, this is also some API that is getting triggered. If you see here, it is actually hitting the search endpoint with some weather is the query, right? I have given only weather as a query here, right? So it by default it understood what weather I want because this is my location, right? It understood my location, and it understood what location weather I want, and it returned some response. Right? If you go to preview, you can see some response, right? So it gave me some response, correct? If you go to this weather also, you can see this 35 is the response we get and it's rendered somewhere, right? So these are the dynamic content that is getting loaded, right? So why, what's the difference between a static and dynamic content? If both are loaded from API request, static will load fast. Yes, one of the answers. Any other answers? Yes, that is more precise answer. Thank you, Tripti. Static is loaded once, correct? If once this Google page is downloaded as a static content, right, with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, do you need this HTML, CSS, JavaScript to be downloaded again and again? Because that's going to be same. Doesn't have to download again and again, right? So what happens here is there are certain caches that are in 2-3 places. Even your browser takes certain cached data into its system, right? And it caches this Google web page. Unless if you go to, once you open this developer window and right click here, there is something called empty cache and hard reload, right? Only in that place it will load all the content again, right? Right from JS, CSS, and everything. Otherwise, there are some sort of caching mechanism that takes place in your browser as well, right? Static doesn't take less memory. It's not like that. Static takes the memory, whatever static files sizes. Right? It's not about taking less memory, more memory. Static content has to load only once. This dynamic contents are the one which has to load again and again depending upon what we are seeing here, right? Another example, maybe I think currently IPL is going on, right? If you go to IPL live, let's say some live matches going on currently, correct? This web page is loaded, right? And if you go to this F12 and go to the network tab, let's go to this all section. let's wait here. So let's say this is a web page, right? If you see here, some web page content is loaded here. This is HTML responsible for getting this web page rendered in this format. You can see this themes, the first section, and you can see this RCB bowling, DC batting. If you just notice here, I didn't do anything, but some API got triggered, right? Why this is happening? I didn't refresh any page and I didn't do anything, but something is getting triggered. Why it is getting triggered now?
It is fetching latest data.
Correct. And how it is automatically getting triggered without me doing any refresh? I didn't do any refresh here to fetch the latest data. It is automatically refreshing the data here, right? Again, here JavaScript is responsible for running this data in a let's say in a cycle. Let's say there will be some logic, internal logic. No, hey, trigger this API where you can get the score information. Let's say once in 30 seconds or once in 60 seconds, right? And this data, whatever you see here, will be refreshed. This data will be refreshed. Maybe this probability will refresh. On this data will be refreshed, right? And maybe this whatever you see here, this will be refreshed. But what will be not refreshed here? Let's close this for once. This score will be refreshed without me refreshing this page, right? What will be not refreshed here? Any answers?
Team names.
Team names.
Team names and the scorecard tab, comments, trending. These are some HTML data, logos. Yes, these doesn't have to be refreshed, right? So these are the data that are loaded only once, correct? Static data. And what is being loaded again and again here? Let's say the example is score. Yes, layout. Someone has answered. Layout doesn't have to be refreshed again and again. Only certain parts of this HTML web page where the content needs to be updated dynamically is getting refreshed again and again. So this way of doing things, right? See, just now this thing, live probability gets updated, right? So this concept where only certain parts of your HTML page gets updated frequently and other doesn't have to get updated frequently is called AJAX kind of request or XHR request. Those are the requests that you see in this tab. If you go to this XHR, no, those are the API requests that or AJAX requests that you see. The request that is getting triggered only that data that we get only certain part of the HTML page gets updated, not the entire page is refreshed as such. Even if I refresh the entire page, everything is reloaded again and again, right? But only certain data is updated at in this web page through some API request. Those are called AJAX requests. And who is responsible for updating the data in this particular part of the web page? I mean, again, this 110 score and with 8 wickets is coming from this data is coming from API request. But who is responsible for that updating the data here?
Scheduler and cron job, you can say.
I mean, scheduler and cron job again triggers the API request and gets the data, but someone should be responsible for updating the data right in this layout, right?
JavaScript.
Yes, again, it is taken care by JavaScript, correct? Client side JS, correct? So these are the important things that we need to remember while doing an API testing, are very basic API concepts, correct? So it is a responsibility of JavaScript to trigger this API request in a frequent manner and get the data and update the data in this layout alone. So one JavaScript will be responsible for updating the data here, or another JavaScript will be updating this probability, right? Or even one JavaScript is updating both. This depends upon how Google develops the servers, totally up to them. But you got the basic point, right? This page is not refreshed every time. Only the part of the page, this particular tab, or let's say you see here, you go and inspect here, right? There's a particular div here. No? Only this div gets updated then and there. So what there will be some JavaScript code. Hey, find this div with this class name score and update the data here, whatever it got from the API request. It is as simple as that. So for dynamic data like this, every time an API request has to be triggered, and you will get the data, and the JavaScript is responsible for updating the data in the right layout or right div, whatever you call it. And static data has to load only once, so it doesn't have to refresh again and again. So so we can see the clear advantage, right? This HTML, CSS, and JSS are called static data, or even images that you loaded in the website, right? If you see here, the images of RCB or DC is not going to change, Even images can be called as a static data, right? And in this example, we can call this scores as the dynamic data. So with this basic understanding of the differences, then we have to understand where the static data comes from and dynamic data comes from. Of course, both are coming from an API request, but the fundamentals are little different. The static data can be loaded. I think someone was actually answering this. Static data generally loads first and loads faster. Correct? It has to load faster because that is the basic layout of any given web page. Correct. So to load it faster, usually static data will come from something called CDNs. Anyone heard of this? You go to Google also, right? If you go to the sources, you see here, these are one CDNs. APSL.google.com is one CDN. Fonts.gstatic.com is one CDN. Okay. But what is a CDN? CDN is another type of server, or you can call that as a storage mechanism. Basically, okay, let's put this. What is the CDN? CDN is a content delivery network. Okay. So I was talking about how this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript or even images will not change over a period of time frequently. So let's say I am requesting this IPL score information from Google, right? So what it does is like I will not be one person who is interested in IPL. I think yesterday, 2 days before, you would have seen in the Geo TV, right? This IPL is actually watched by over 2 crore people. Let's say around 145 crore people in India. Let's say 2 crore people are interested in watching this IPL score in Google. Let's say. Okay. So can a single server deliver this 2 crore people data? Can a single server do that? Or let's say even there are some tens and hundreds of server responsible, right? For serving some data, let's say scores. Even that much amount of servers cannot process the data that's required by 2 crore people, right? No, it's not possible. Especially for the contents, maybe scores I can understand. If the score is very dynamic, if that is served from some certain number of servers, then I can understand fine. But this data like this images and this HTML, CSS, and it's going to be same for everyone, correct? Irrespective of wherever I watch, even I watch in Delhi, Rajasthan, Jaipur, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, wherever I'm watching this logo is going to be same, correct? So why I have to load this logo again and again from a server, from a Google server? I don't need to do. So what these people do is, this Google image is actually loaded, will be loaded by one API request. Right? So it is not directly redirected to Google servers. It will come from something called CDN servers or content delivery network servers. And Google servers might be, let's say, in India, major servers are in Bangalore and Mumbai. Right? These Bangalore and Mumbai servers cannot be alone responsible for delivering this static content alone. No? Or I'm in Coimbatore, some person may be in Bangalore, some person may be in Chennai, some person may be in Hyderabad, some person may be in Kolkata, right? So this content delivery networks are some infrastructure, or you can think about this as a temporary storage mechanism, right? Or a caching mechanism where this kind of static data are stored in the places that are very, very near to you. Let's say India has only servers in Mumbai and Bangalore, but this CDN servers can be as near as 30 kilometers away from you. In Coimbatore, or even Kerala, or even Andhra, or even Telangana, right? So it can be places as near from me, like just 30 kilometers or 45 kilometers away, right? so that this process of distributing the static contents are actually widespread. It is not from a single point of source. The CDN, since this CDN infrastructure is present throughout the India in the places very near to you, right? These kind of static files can be cached temporarily there, and the traffic can be served from the place very near to you. Again, there are so many vendors who are actually having the CDN infrastructure. Maybe Google itself might have this CDN infrastructure in it through its own cost or through some third parties. They will have a contract with the CDN providers, and their CDNs are responsible for caching this data in the CDN servers. And the request will not go to the, for example, the request to load this RCB logo will not go to the Google server, but rather will go to the CDN server. And the CDN server is responsible for delivering this logo to me, right? In that way, the load in the Google servers are very much reduced, and also you will get the data very much faster because the content is delivered from the data CDN server very near you. If you want to know more about CDNs, you can export this thing called Bunny CDN. Okay, it is also one of the content delivery network partner, right? Where even you can open an account here and store some image or video or whatever, and generate a URL for that, and you can actually share it with your friends. There's a free trial, you can try this, actually. Right? So this is where static contents are actually delivered, right? Your images, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are actually not delivered from your actual servers. It is actually delivered from the CDN servers, because these are the content which are not going to change frequently, and these are the content which has to be loaded fast for the people near you. Why it has to load fast? Let's say this IPL score is live, right? Let's say this score is getting updated, right? Now it's 123 for 8. No? How much will be the size of this score? How much will be the size of this data that is received? Maybe in bytes, correct? Just getting the data of 123 in 17 overs. It's a very, very small data, right? In terms of bytes, correct? But whereas these images and all might be little large data, no? At least in KBs, correct? If not in MBs. Let's say you are loading, if you go to Instagram or if you go to any image sharing site, at least some images will take 0.8 MB or 1 MB, right? So that as these kind of contents get consumed, it's not wise to store all this data in a single place, right? So because the size of the content is also large, and also you have to get this data in a very fast manner. What is the hard limit of in which speed you can get the data? What's the hard limit? Or what's the maximum speed in which the API can give you data? Simple answer only, right? It's a speed of light, no? Data transfers happen in the speed of light, right? Okay, anyway. So I hope I'm not boring you people and making you sleep, because the answers are getting less as the time passes. I hope delivering the content in a little interesting manner only.
Sir, the relevance with respect to speed of light you are telling from the optic fiber concept?
Yes, even if you travel, I mean, even if you transfer the file even in a cable, right? The electrical signals also, even electrical signals has the hard limit of speed of light, right?
Okay.
Thank you. So that is the maximum speed they can get, right? So let's say if some servers are in the US, and US is almost like 18,000, 20,000 kilometers away from India, right? So if you put this speed of light as a hard cap, so at least it will take some milliseconds or even seconds, depending upon the traffic congestion in the network, to get you all the data, no? So for these kind of API requests, data has to be near you, cached near you, correct? With the data centers near you. And these are the infrastructure that are near you, called CDNs, which are responsible for delivering these contents, right? All these static contents. So we saw the examples, right? HTML, CSS, JS, and images and all. Any other example of what can be a static content? Any other examples? Files, yes, PDF files, correct. Any other examples? PDF, actually very good example, correct. What about videos? Let's say you are watching some YouTube video or even some movies in Netflix. Can this be deemed as a static content? Links, no, links are not that static. Videos can be deemed as a static content, right? There's a very interesting terminology of how these videos are actually getting rendered in your YouTube, in your browser. Video is not streamed in a single file. It is actually a chunk of files that is getting streamed and knitted together in the browser back for you, depending upon certain metadata. So let's say you are watching some famous movie, right? What's famous in Netflix today? Let's say some movie, right? You're watching in Netflix today. So that movie, let's say, is newly released, and it's let's say it's trending in #1 in India, and at least like 10 lakh people are going to watch that movie in the first 2 days. Would it be wise to send a very huge data, right? Let's say you're watching in HD, at least 2 GB, 3 GB data you will consume to watch a movie. Is it wise to store a data away from you? Let's say these movies are stored in India, in Bangalore and Mumbai. Person who is sitting in Assam, if he sits and watch these movies from Assam, from Mumbai, crossing all these traffic hops and congestions, is it wise to serve the data traffic from there? No, right? So not all the videos will be, let's say, if Netflix has some 1,000 movies, not all the movies will be cached in the serials near you. Movies that are trending, that are frequently watched by the people around your location, let's say for that example, will be cached in the respective CDN servers, correct? And those kind of contents will be delivered not from the original server, Netflix server, rather than the CDNs near you. The original request will go to Netflix server, and the Netflix server will redirect this server request back to your CDN near you, and you will start to consume the content from the CDNs near you. Even for the movies, that is the case, because movies are again static, right? Once the movie is uploaded, it's a single file that is available to all the people to consume throughout the world, correct? Yes. So now we got the understanding of basics, what is a static content and dynamic content, from where it is delivered. Usually static contents are delivered from CDNs. And also, don't only think like only CDNs are responsible for generating, delivering static content. It can be delivered from the servers as well, for the original server which is handling the request. But that is not a good design. Is it possible to deliver the static content from the server? Yes, but that is not a good design. So any major company or any major websites that you see will always delegate the static content request to the CDNs near you. That is how they operate. That is how they can scale, correct? And the dynamic contents are actually loaded from the servers, actual servers that you request the data from. Okay, so these are the two things that basic things that we need to know in the terms of API requests, right? Where these contents are delivered. Now let's take this IPL example itself. So static is fine. We all know where this comes from, where this images loads, who is responsible for triggering that image and loading. Everything is fine. Now let's come to this dynamic content example. Now the score is getting refreshed in IPL, right? The score is getting refreshed every 30 seconds or 1 minute. Now I am hitting this Google website only. If you go to this network tab also, no? Let's say this is the URL that's responsible for getting the score, right? I'm hitting Google server, or rather this page is hitting the Google server to get the latest score. But is Google responsible for scoring and storing the IPL score in its database? Is it its job to do that? and 6 balls, 36 runs. Who knows? The Rinku Singh miracle. I don't know. I don't know who follows IPL here. No, right? Rinku Singh hit some 5 sixes in the last 6 balls and won the match. Okay. Anyway, let's see if the miracle happens. And I don't know. RCB's luck is very bad. Anyway. So you got the point, right? This whose responsibility is actually this? Right? Is it Google's responsibility to store this IPL data? No, right? It's not. It's because Google is just responsible for giving the data in a certain form. Then where this data is actually available? Where this data is available? It is actually available in the IPL servers, correct? IPL will have certain servers that is responsible for storing this IPL related data, correct? And those servers are responsible for storing all this information. Then how the Google is able to get the data from IPL servers? So Google will have certain contracts, correct? Yes, Google will hit the IPL server APIs. It cannot just go and hit, right? It has to have some contract with the IPL servers, correct? At least register as a client of the IPL server or pay some money to access this information, whatever it is, correct? Google is responsible for hitting this API, IPL server APIs, right? And it will get the response back. And in turn, Google will send this response back to clients. That is me who is consuming this data. Okay, RCB is going to win. Anyway, with that note, right? So this dynamic content, right? So client, that is me, will hit the Google server. And the Google server will in turn hit the IPL data, IPL server. And this is where actual you get the data. And this data is transferred back from IPL server to the response flow. The IPL server will give to the Google. And the Google will again give back to me. Correct? Yes, Raghav, please, you can talk.
Yeah. Karthik, in general, like whoever has their domains or sites, they register with Google to get their listing in the Google search. That's what I remember long time back. So
No,
people will tie up with Google search engine and they want to get their URLs listed on the top, the top 500 or top 100, top 10, something like that. Is that right? That's the way they get listed in the search?
It's not registering. Registering domain is like you have to have a domain name server provider, like GoDaddy or even Google's own such provider. Right? It's not that Google. These kind of people who runs the business, right? They actually pay the Google to actually move up their website ranking. Correct?
Yeah, that's what I think.
It depends upon a number of factors. How much you pay for Google, right? SEO, correct? SEO, and also like how much frequently your data is being accessed by the people, right?
Okay.
And if you go to some, let's say I'm hitting Samsung, correct? If I just hit Samsung, if you see here, the immediate website is sponsored, correct? If you see you may go to any search hit in Google, the immediate response will be some ad will be listed or some sponsored content will be there. So what is the sponsored here? Even before the original Samsung URL that is listed in the Google web page, same URL only, but it is sponsored URL, correct? That means what Samsung is paying Google to list this particular let's say this URL on top, right? Let's say it is a number one rank in the Google search engine for this particular keyword. That's how Google indexes its data based upon how much sponsorship it is getting, right? And also how much people are using it, SEO and many other factors. Right? Let's say I'm searching for a particular mobile S22. Right? We see here again. Can you see? S22 is not immediately returning Samsung URL. Instead, it's returning Amazon's URL. That means what? Maybe for this particular mobile, Amazon is paying more data to.
Okay. Very good. Interesting thing. Yeah. So in the case of IPL, how we are getting that results, like do IPL pay Google more, or how is that like in this Google search
IPL
IPL?
doesn't have to pay Google in this case. See, what is any website's first thing? Let's say you are using Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or even Google or even ChatGPT for that matter, right? What
Yeah.
does those websites want from you? Any answers for this question actually?
They want the more registered count, you know, the count people.
They want you to use them.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So even though some
Data.
data are free, right? They want you to stay in that platform as long as possible. That is their victory, correct? So if you stay in the particular platform as long as possible, that means you are more chances of using that particular platform more and more in the future. And through that, they can drive you this ads by targeting you, correct? This targeting, I think everyone would have heard of, right? You would go to certain, let's say I've searched this yesterday to know, now this same ad will be coming for me wherever I go, right? In whichever website I go. Because this particular information is cached in my local against my some user ID, right? Google ad ID or whatever. And this is the same ad that I'm going to get whichever website. Maybe I'm just go to GSM Arena, who knows? I will get this ad, right? So this is the same ad I'm going to see wherever I go, right? Irrespective in the future, correct? This is an advertisement section. Okay. So, okay, I have an ad block just in case. So you got the whole point, right?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So, any platform wants you to use their platform more and more so that the engagement percentage will increase. And you are actually, without you knowing yourself, you are being targeted, and somehow you will be, let's say if 1,000 users are targeted for a particular device, let's say S22 for an example, at least if 1% converts, right, it will be very big for them. 1,000 is a very small number, just give you an example. Right, 1% converts means at least 10 people are buying this mobile is a very big advantage for them. So only people recently after this advent of TikTok, no, they have done a very extensive analysis, and they come to know people are staying longer in their platform with this short contents, short videos. So only after TikTok, everyone started with this trick, right? TikTok came up with this short videos. Even before TikTok, the name was Musical.ly. I don't know how many people are following from that time. Musical.ly was its original name. TikTok bought that and renamed that as a TikTok. And then eventually TikTok was banned in India, and subsequently Instagram thought it was a good thing. And now Instagram has Reels, YouTube has Shorts, and Facebook also has Reels only. In turn, Reels are only connected to Facebook, but it has different name. I forgot the name. Okay. So every provider, social media out there is currently having this short video format in their particular app. No? Why is that? Because they know the potential of short videos. And if you know the things from the market recently, Google is actually mailing their content creators to actually start creating more short videos rather than the long format videos. They're actually pushing for short videos because they got to know that this short content having more viewership, more engaging. Even I'm little addicted to YouTube Shorts. If I just go down in the night in my cot and I'll scroll down this YouTube Shorts continuously, at least for 30-45 minutes, I'll be into this YouTube Shorts, right? And eventually you will be targeted somehow with or without your knowledge with some ads, correct? So be a little mindful of that. Any platform wants you to spend so much time with their platform eventually and get the maximum out of you. You are their product, right? Be a little mindful of that. And one of the reasons TikTok got banned is apart from all these Chinese, all these things and all, TikTok had a different algorithm for China and for the rest of the world. In China, it is mostly education content, and in the rest of the world, mostly entertainment content. So it's like not making sense, right? Because if you are partial or if you are targeting people differently based upon your personal advantages or personal thing, it's not a right thing to do, right? That was also one of the main reasons TikTok got banned. It doesn't have a consistent algorithm. That means there's some sort of shady things going on there, correct? Why some people has to get a certain high quality content, others are only has to get an entertainment content so that they don't get to do something with their life, right? So that was the reason. And I think few other countries are considering banning TikTok now. Yes. So anyway, this targeting is also part of this API actually, right? Any API request will also get the response and get this cookie information. If you see here, there are some various cookies, right? There's a cookie extension that you can install in your Google Chrome and see what cookies that they have there for you. So once you search something with this Google account, right, there will be some Google ad ID that will be registered against you, correct? And whatever you search here will be tagged against your ad ID. My ad ID will be something, right? And any other website who was partnering with Google to target you can access this ad ID, and it will know what content that you are actually interested in. For example, I've searched STM32 Ultra, right? Now, wherever I go, I'll see the relevant advertisements there. Right? That is how they are targeting with help of these cookies and the content that is stored in your local network. Correct. So that is how all these platforms operate. Right? So now again coming to dynamic content. Right? So I am requesting Google server, and Google servers in turn hitting the IPL servers, and IPL is getting the response back to Google. Google is in turn responding back to me. Right now, in this case, my immediate server is Google. Google server is IPL. That point is clear, right? So IPL, what is sorry, I see. Okay. Anyway, so you got the flow, right? Now, this actual information is got from the IPL server, right? Now, what information I am getting directly from the Google server in this example, or maybe in this weather example itself? What is information I'm directly getting from the Google server here? Any answers? This weather definitely I'm getting from weather.com server, not from Google server. Any other answers? Search list. Again, Google indexes the search list and caches this data. It is not directly from the servers of Google, right? Any specific Google, it's directly served from Google and servers. What about my account information? This is something which cannot be given by any other website. No? I have registered myself as Karthik with some email ID in Google. Yes, and my photo here. Okay. So these are my account information should be coming from the Google servers only, correct? So that is a small difference. I just want you to note, and maybe if you're new to AP, understand why this is different, correct? So this information, this account information is directly coming from Google because I'm directly registered myself as Karthik with Google, right? And all other information I'm requesting is directly either it's coming from the indexed data in the Google. Of course, Google servers are indexing this data, and maybe it has cache and services data, but it doesn't have any it does have any secondary data sources, right? Timeanddate.com, weather.com, and even Times of India. These are the top listed URLs, correct? They must be paying some Google AdSense to list their websites in the top 10 or top 20. So definitely these weather informations or whatever information you see here is not a direct information from Google. Google delegates this information to other servers and gets information. But what is directly originating from Google servers? My account information. I just want you to think about this. Maybe if you're new to API and why this is the case, and maybe do a little bit of own research and maybe come up for tomorrow's session. Anyway, continuing. I just want you to understand API is not a single API that gets everything. There are multiple APIs which gets a thing done for you, even if the website is as simple as Google and getting the information for you, right? There are multiple APIs that are hit and actually doing the work for you, right? Like if I refresh the page, there are so many APIs that are getting triggered here, right? One for image, one for JavaScript, one for CSS, and one for getting this HTML, and other API calls to get the weather information and indexed URLs, correct? So you have to understand these are the multiple APIs that are working parallelly in tandem to generate or render this website information for us. And as we saw, this can be static content, this can be dynamic content. And we just have to understand where the static content comes from, where this dynamic content comes from. Correct. So this part is clear. Any queries with respect to whatever we saw until now?
I have a question.
Yes.
Dynamic data always comes from server.
Any data comes from the server. It's not only dynamic data. The only difference between static and dynamic is, as I said previously, static content can be static. You can consider the CDN as also a type of server only, but it's more of a storing and caching mechanism with some URL attached to it. You can directly hit the CDNs and get this data. Server is also a computer with memory, hardware, and CPU and storage, right? So generally, dynamic content, static content is actually served from a server, and dynamic content will not be stored in the CDNs. The static content will be stored in CDNs, and dynamic content is directly available in any database that server connects to in the actual server side. Right, and any other, let's say in the weather example, it will redirect the request to weather.com. In the IPL example, it will redirect the request to IPL servers to get the information for us. So anyway, sorry.
Dynamic data does not get stored in CDN for some time even, right?
Might be depending upon the use case. Generally, it is not, but in
Or
some
it
cases,
get refreshed. Or it get refreshed in CDN time to time.
yes, it gets refreshed in CDN. So it all depends upon what kind of data that you are accessing and how that vendor or the server choose to implement this logic and architecture.
Okay.
And also any data server is just a computer which understands this information and process this request, right? Let's say my account information, right? karthik.rajasevi@gmail.com, my first name, last name, everything is coming from the server, but server is just a computer with a CPU which understands the request and process the information. It doesn't necessarily have to store this information, right? Let's say my first name and last name and email informations are here. Is it server's responsibility to store this information in the server computer? Yes or no?
Yes.
It is not server's risk. I mean, server doesn't store this information in the server's computer, correct?
Yeah.
So where this information is stored, how this API is able to fetch this information, from where it is getting?
From Google server.
Google server, yes.
Google database.
Databases, correct. So databases are the heart of any APIs, correct? Databases are where your actual data gets stored. And what the server is doing? Server is just accessing, in other words, server has a right to access this data from the particular database and gets the information back to you, correct? Server is just a worker, correct? It doesn't store the information. But server has an access to the information that is stored in the database.
Okay.
Is it clear, right? Or is it confusing?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So server is just a worker who receives the request and processes the data, but it doesn't store the data in its own computer. Where the data is stored? Data is actually stored in a database in some other computer. Database are also, there are different types of database, we'll talk about it. But these databases also will be stored in some kind of computers only, where the disk space is more in a distributed system, correct? Anyway, the server is responsible for having this connection or having the access to this database, correct? And it reads the database or queries the database if this particular information is available or not. If it's available, it is fetching the data and it is returning the data back to us. live data will not be, we can be stored, cannot be stored for tracking purposes in the Google. Let's say in this IPL example itself, right? Let's say if the match is over now. Now this doesn't have to query this score again and again to IPL servers, no? So it has to do that. Let's say I'm refreshing this page again. It's going to give me the same data, correct? Does this Google needs to query IPL servers for the score again? So the answer is it can or it might not. That's the answer. Okay. So it can means if the Google decides I don't want to store all this information from my end anyway, even if it's a past data and the match is over, still the IPL server will have this data for historical purposes, is correct. So Google can actually do, still the match is not dynamic. It can get the static data or the data which is actually stored for the finished IPL matches from the IPL servers and return it back to you. Or what Google can do, it can also store this data in its own database, correct? Since the match is over, it doesn't have to update the data dynamically. It can store this data in its own database as someone has answered for analytic purpose or serving to its maybe customers until this IPL is over, whatever it chooses to do, correct? Now it can search this data from the Google's databases also. We do not know what type of contracts Google is having with IPL. And these are very sensitive things, right? Just like the Google cannot decide to store all the IPL information. It has to get a permission from IPL and it has to have a proper contract with that particular thing to store and search this data. Otherwise, there'll be a legal lawsuit, correct? So it can be either way. It all depends upon the use cases. I hope I was able to answer that question. So now coming to the databases, right? Now we understood server is only a worker who accesses this database and returns to the client, correct? So this data can be in another server like this IPL servers, right? Can be in entirely another server, which Google will in turn have access to this IPL servers and gets the data and return it back. Or Google can store its own data, have a own database and store there. Okay? Now coming to databases, right? What are the types of database or the examples of database that you people might know? Or in a very broad category, databases can be classified as SQL and NoSQL, correct? Worked on both the things. I personally prefer NoSQL. It's very interesting concept. Anyway, who knows this broad classification or who haven't heard about NoSQL anyone here? Who doesn't know what's a NoSQL? Any newbies? Okay, no problem. We'll see. So SQL databases are data which displays the data to you in a very structured format, especially in rows and columns, right? In a tabular format, correct? Internally, the data is not stored in a tabular format. It is stored in some data structure called B tree. Okay, it is a very interesting data structure. Please go and read about this if you have time. Right. But when, let's say in a SQL table, let's say I'm storing some employee records, right, with ID, first name, last name, and email, something like that. It will be displayed in the rows and columns, correct? ID is one, first name is Karthik, let's say last name is Raja, and email is karthik@gmail.com. Something, right? Like that, it will have a name. Second name is something XYZ. Correct? It goes on. So you can see this information as a rows and columns, and you can query this information based on certain criteria in particular column, right? So I can query this information based on ID, based on first name, last name, or combination of these factors, correct? So that's called a SQL databases, where the data is displayed to you as a rows and columns, correct? Examples of SQL databases. Very famous one, right? MySQL, Oracle SQL developer, Oracle, MS SQL. What else? One famous name is there, no? Any examples? Any other examples? Other examples as well. A famous name. Have you heard this? Postgre. No. Okay. So these are the examples of the databases stored in which stores information in the row column format, correct? But each will have a different, maybe little different implementation. Maybe something has more optimization in terms of how fast you can access the data, or in what speed you can write the data to a database, right? Based upon the use case or cost, you can choose to go with any one of these SQL databases, correct? When you design a system. So what's the example of NoSQL databases? So maybe someone has answered previously. Yes, Sumit, thank you. DynamoDB. Coming from Amazon, right? And we are working extensively with this only inside Amazon. Okay, DynamoDB, yes, and Cassandra. Yes. There's something called, which is one of my favorite. Something called Elasticsearch, MongoDB, yes. So MongoDB stores information as MongoDB and even Elasticsearch store the information as a JSON format, correct? So whereas this this SQL databases, all SQL databases can also have a column called JSON type, but doesn't store the information as a JSON itself, correct? Whereas if you take a MongoDB as an example, it will have a JSON structure. The same employee example, it will be something like this: ID, one, first name. This is a JSON example. You got the basic difference, right? How this stores the data. This is an example of SQL database where you're seeing this is data in the row one column. This is an example of NoSQL database, right? Where the data is stored in a JSON format, correct? And you have multiple, you can have multiple record like this, correct? ID2 and so on, correct? So MongoDB or even Elasticsearch indexes the data in a JSON format. Cassandra is a wide column database. Cassandra, even DynamoDB for that matter. You can have a primary key, partition key. It's very interesting concept. You can just go and see, read about this. So wide column databases, right? So please go and read. NoSQL databases are like the future, and I think it will be replacing SQL databases when and where possible. How do we query from this? Querying, I think every tool will have a different way of doing that. ES will have on ES, you can actually query using the endpoint itself, right? Even from MongoDB for that matter, you can pass the field which you want to query and index that field only, right? And you can get the list of records, right? Querying will be different from each. In Cassandra, you will query with primary key and the partition key and sort key and all. Right. So it will be totally different. Depends upon what's your use cases. There's one more NoSQL databases or caching mechanism called Redis, which stores in a key value format, data in a key value format. Right? So it totally depends. Okay. Now you have to understand this information, right? For example, my account information is displayed here. This information we don't know. Google might have stored this information in a SQL database or even NoSQL database for that. NoSQL database means maybe my data would have been looking like this in their servers, and SQL databases means my data would have been looking like this. So when I hit google.com, what happens? Just opening a new page, I'm just typing Google, and I'm hitting. You can see this logo popped up with my information, correct? And how this is possible? The information, this goes to the Google server, and Google server connects to database where my information is stored, and it reads this. Sorry, it reads this first name, last name, email, and ID, right? And then it returns the response back to the client. Right? The server is just going to connect to a database and reads this data and returns the data back to the client. In this case, the client is the browser. Okay. Today for today's demo, we'll stop with this. I don't want to dump too many informations, right? But don't think like I'm not jumping to any tool to show some demo. Tool we can learn on. Tool is as simple as just putting use of this concept we learn. Put the data in the right placeholders. Yeah, hit the send button, get the response. That is as simple as that. But understanding these concepts are very, very important. Is what I feel as a beginner or even people who are getting started with API or even for API automation for that matter, right? Understanding what is happening in the backdrop, especially these learnings were very, very crucial for me, at least for my transition when I was doing from testing to development in my career. Right? Once I came to this development and understand how this server works and how these APIs are even being created, it really fascinated me. How on a very surface level we are actually knowing the things while doing API testing, and in the deep, actually so many things are happening to make this work. So those details are very, very important. Otherwise, API, what you see in the Postman or API, rest assured, just a matter of how we are going to get this information and test it out. We'll cover those things also in the upcoming sessions, but understanding these are very, very important. Right? Recordings will be available with Rahul. You can ping him. I think if you have not been added to the WhatsApp group we have for our API, please ping Rahul to get the sublink or get connected with him for recordings. How to interact with DB? Yes, I have a project for that also, but we'll be seeing that in the last way, a little more complicated thing to understand. First, we'll go with the Postman and Newman, rest assured everything, and we'll see that as well. And tomorrow, one more demo session is there. After that, we'll show you like what we'll be covering in this sessions, right? And how many time span and what all things we'll be doing. Contents, yes, of course, I will share with you people tomorrow. Right? I hope this session was very, very interesting and useful to you people. And please do join the second demo session tomorrow. I think it will be even more interesting. Any other questions for today? Okay, then can we wind up the session for today? Hey, thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you tomorrow. Connect with Rahul for recording and the schedules. Thank you.